Hi guys, this is Fox again, and today we're going to talk about death, the ultimate evil. Or is it? Is death something we should really worry about or care about on a day-to-day basis? And the main question for today is life valuable in and of itself? So we're going to start with a thought experiment, and this thought experiment goes, it's a diabolical disease. This isn't like cancer, it's not going to kill you, it's going to do worse. Instead of just letting you die, it's going to continue to torture you over the course of your entire existence. So your life is going to be just full of suffering, essentially. So what do you do? Is life still valuable or worth living in this circumstance? I think if we're talking from a purely secular point of view, we're not going to discuss religion here yet, because that's just going to overcomplicate things. But from a purely secular point of view, I think there are two responses for this. The first one being that life is not worth living. The disease is too painful, and that suffering just isn't worth going through, so it's life becomes meaningless at that point. The second point of view, I think, would be that life is still worth living because you have the potential to still have special moments with friends and family, or you have, something that you like to do, like playing a sport, that you can still do. So despite the fact that you're experiencing all this suffering, it's worth it because you can still have this happiness. So let's take it one step further though. What if this disease was completely debilitating, as in it caused you just so much suffering that you could not experience nice moments with family or play any of these sports that you like, or whatever it is that floats your boat? In this case, I think that it would be unanimous across the board that people would say that life in this case is not meaningful. So what does that mean? I think what it means is that those little moments, or that happiness that we have in our life, is actually what's valuable here, and not life itself. Life is valuable only insofar as we can have some kind of happiness. So this is an important point, because that means that life itself is not something that's actually valuable. However, that happiness is, and that's very important. So I'm not making light of life. I'm just saying that I think that its value is attributed to the happiness, and not just the fact that you're living and breathing. So that brings up some other questions though. The first being, how much happiness do we need in order for life to be valuable? What makes it worth it? At what point do you give up against this theoretical disease? Is it when you're 50-50, when you have 50% suffering and 50% happiness? Maybe when that suffering crosses the line, maybe when it goes 60 and you only get 40% happiness? Is that enough to give up? About 70-30, or 90-10, or 95-5? At what point do you concede? Or is it that any amount of happiness is enough? Is it 1% happiness enough to continue to stay alive? Or, even deeper, is the potential for future happiness enough to keep you going? As in, say the disease is curable in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, or there's even a chance, like a 50% chance that it's curable in that timeline. Would that be enough to keep you going, or say that life is meaningful? So I don't think there's going to be any unanimous conclusion on this, but the point is that I think that most of us would settle for less than a 50-50 spread. And a lot of us would probably even settle for a chance of happiness in the future. And how do I know this? Well, because people do this every day. People are working towards a better future, and some people have very, very little happiness in their life, but they think that in the future, maybe I'll have some or more. And that's not to say, oh, woe is me. Most of us suffer on a day-to-day basis doing our jobs so we can have some smidgen of happiness. The point is that that happiness is actually worth that amount of suffering. That even just a little bit is enough to keep us going and make us think that life is meaningful, and that's how powerful and potent and valuable that is to us. So if it's so valuable, is it ever okay to reduce the amount of somebody's happiness to cause somebody suffering? If it's that valuable, is that ever an option? And when? And how would you justify it? Those are important considerations, I think, that we need to take into consideration when we interact with people day to day. Also, in another vein entirely, are there times where you would voluntarily dying or exposing yourself to a risky situation that might cause death, and thereby in the existence of happiness for the infinite future for you? Are there any situations where that is acceptable or worth doing? And when would those be? Those are some questions we're going to come back to, but not before we define actually what happiness is, which we're not going to do in this video, but this is going to be a segue into our next video about happiness and the definition thereof. But for now, what do you think? Is death a big deal? And is meaningful experience or happiness really what makes life meaningful? Or is there something else that I'm missing? So, think on that. Comment. And tell me if you like this video. And if there's anything else you want to discuss, there's no problem jumping topics. So please comment below, like us, tell your friends on Facebook, and we'll open this conversation to as many voices as possible. And until next time, I'll see you later.